Corporate finance practice problem using Excel. Earnings per share, dividend per share, and dividend yield calculations. Get ready. It's time to take our chance with corporate finance. Here we are in our Excel worksheet. If you have access to the Excel worksheet, would like to follow along, note that we're in the practice tab as opposed to the example tab. The example tab in essence being an answer key. We have the information on the left-hand side. We're going to populate that into the blue area on the right-hand side, calculating earnings per share, dividends per share, and the dividend yield. So note when you're looking at problems like this, sometimes the information is going to be somewhat limited. Could be that way in practice. Also, it could be that way in basically a book problem or test question. Our goal here is to think about these formulas in different ways so we can back in, use our algebra to whatever the unknown is going to be that we're looking for. So we have the market price on the left-hand side at the $85, the price earnings ratio at the $20, the payout ratio at the 0.55. Now, if we start off thinking about how we can calculate the earnings per share, we might say, normally I would calculate the earnings per share. I'd be looking for basically the earnings, which would be the kind of net income type of number divided by the number of shares out there, something like that. But I don't see that on the left-hand side. So then you might go through here and try to think about what would be the calculation for what we do have. And for example, if we look at the price earnings ratio, we would be comparing the price, the market price, to the earnings per share to give us the price earnings ratio. And we do have the market price, so we have one of those three numbers, and we've got the end number. So I can use that one possibly to back into the unknown, which is the earnings per share. So let's try that out. And then we'll rework it. Remember, when you look at a book problem solution, it's never going to format it really this way because it's going to give you the most succinct kind of calculation, making you think that you need another kind of formula for everything that you do. But really, you want to make sure you're using your algebra and understanding the relationship between these formulas. So if we take then the market price, we're going to pick up the market price. That's going to be the 85. We got the earnings per share. This is the unknown, the earnings per share. We don't know that, so I'm going to make it yellow. We do know the end result, which is going to be the price earnings ratio. That's the one we have. That's going to be at the 20. So we can then calculate this, and obviously you can write this out algebraically, but sometimes writing it vertically in like a table format is useful when you're just doing a quick, fairly small calculation like this. You can see it even in a test question. Oftentimes I'll write something out vertically like this. So we're then going to say, okay, if this was divided by this to get to there, we should be able to say, let's take the 85 divided by the 20, and that would give us 4. Let's add a couple decimals, number group, add a couple decimals, so we're at the 4.25. Let's double check it by picking up the 85, picking up the 4.25, adding a couple decimals, number group, adding a couple decimals, and then doing our division problem, the 85 divided by the 4.25, giving us our 20 there once again. Let's underline these two items. So let's underline it. Now, how you're going to see this, obviously, in an answer key is to rework this algebraically, so the end result is going to be what we want, the earnings per share. So if we just reworked this out algebraically to calculate the earnings per share with what we have, we would be taking the market price, which is going to be that 85. Then we're going to take a look at the price earnings ratio, which is going to be 20, and that will give us our earnings per share. The earnings per share then equal to the 85 over the 20, and adding a couple decimals, number group, couple decimals, there we've got the 4.25. Let's put an underline under the 20, font group and underline, so there we have that. So next we want the dividends per share. Now when we think about the dividends per share, we're probably thinking, okay, normally I would calculate that by taking the number of dividends that went out for all shares and then dividing that basically by the number of shares, or I might have the total net income that I would multiply times the payout ratio to get there. But what I have here on the left-hand side is the payout ratio, and I could think, okay, if I have the payout ratio, what does that consist of? It would be consisting of the dividends divided by the earnings, which I could, because the payout ratio represents the dividends that were paid out of the current earnings. We can think about that in aggregate, meaning total earnings divided, and then the amount of total earnings that were paid out, or on a dividend or a stock by stock basis, because all the stocks, they're uniform in nature. So we have the information on kind of a unit by unit basis here, which should work. So we're going to say, all right, well, the payout ratio is usually going to be the dividends per share. So let's say the dividends per share. That's what we don't know. I'm going to make that yellow, divided by the earnings per share, the earnings per share. And we do know that they gave us the earnings per share, which is what we calculated here, adding a couple decimals, number group, couple decimals, underlining that, font group and underline. And that should give us then our payout ratio, which was given to us at, what was it given to us at? The 0.55, adding a couple decimals, decimalize. So there we have that. Now, if we take the dividends divided by the earnings per share to get to that, then we should be able to pick this number up by taking the 4.25 times the payout ratio. And let's add a couple decimals there, number group, couple decimals. So quick algebra that we can basically see kind of vertically in this format without having to write it out algebraically. But of course, you could write it out horizontally, same kind of thing. And then we're going to calculate it across this way just to double check it here. Let's do it a double check, in double time check. And then we'll underline here. And then we'll say this is going to be equal to the 2.34 divided by the 4.25, and we get back to our 0.55. So it looks correct. Now, of course, if you saw this in a calculation in the book problem, they're going to rework this so that the dividends is the final calculation with another formula. So given the information we have here, if I was to rework this algebraically to get to the dividends per share, we can then say, okay, we got the earnings per share. Let's pick it up this way. We would have picked it up from up top. Times the 4.25, or is the 4.25, numbers, adding a couple decimals, the 4.25, and then we've got the payout ratio, which was given to us, the payout ratio, making that a couple decimals, or adding a couple decimals, font group and underline, and that's going to then give us our dividend per share, dividends per share, which is then going to be equal to the 4.25 times the 0.55. Let's add a couple decimals there. Number group, couple decimals, we're at the 2.34. So then we can think about the dividend yield, which we could be comparing the dividend that an investor would receive compared to the market price that they would be paying for it to get the return, in essence, on the market price. So that would be the dividends per share, which we just said was 2.34. Compared to the market price, we're going to be picking up at the $85, which would be something that would be we would determine from the market number, adding a couple decimals, underlining the 0.8 or the 85%. I don't know why I want to make that a decimal. It's not a decimal. It's not a decimal. Dividend yield then is going to be, and I'd misspelled yield. Dividend yield is going to be then equal to the 2.34 divided by the 85. So we're going to say number group, percentify that, and add a couple decimals, so we're at the 2.75. So there's the dividend yield. What did the knight say to the dividend? Do you yield? And the dividend's like, yeah, we yield 2.75.